This is the 5 Point Play Podcast, the Die Hard Duke Basketball Fans Podcast. 3-game home stretch is in the books, 3-0. Notre Dame, BC, and Wake Forest. All W's for Duke. In the meantime, Carolina's lost a couple games, and now all of a sudden we're right back where we started and we control our own destiny. We'll get into all of that. You see a new face in here. Not really a new face, Connor. You've been on the podcast before. Conor O Neill from Devils Illustrated, and a little bit of a pickle on the other night on Monday night because you're also the Wake beat reporter too. So that must have been a little bit tough for you.
Yeah, as I told, I was on ACC Network the day after the game, and Mark Packer was giving me a little bit of a hard time about it. And like, as much as I like the fact that when they play each other, I don't have to worry about missing one of them and being at the other one. It feels like you're picking. I'm not a father, but it feels like what I imagine you're picking, like if you're going to go to your son's basketball game or your daughter's basketball game. I hate those games. Like it always is just a matter of time before one fan gets pissed off at me pointing out something that went against his team. So yeah, it's those nights are fun from a certain point of view, but also it's just like, okay, we're done with that. Let's move forward and let's move on.
Yeah, we used to have Clint Jackson come on, and he used to do the Carolina and the Duke message boards for rivals. So talk about like really having a problem. And I remember him telling us that Carolina people would go after him when he would talk about Duke, and then vice versa. So I feel you there. Obviously, we got a kind of a skeleton crew here. So Jack, no AC, no Pablo. No Dustin tonight, so we hold serve a little bit, but let's jump right into it. Connor, we'll kind of talk about all three of these games, but let's kind of start with the most recent, which is the Wake game. I thought, I was there as well, and I thought the first half was a little bit sloppy, and one of those games that one of those halves for this team where it's a little bit disjointed. You have potential lapse of effort, and I know it's kind of infamous now that Jay Williams went on at halftime and kind of ripped his team a new one. You were there, Connor. I kind of felt that way, that they needed a kick in the butt, and then I saw kind of a different team in the second half, and I thought that they did a really, really good job of fighting and finding ways to win. Every time Wake Forest made a little bit of a run, I thought Duke done it very well. And then obviously John Shire got the crowd involved, tossing the ball 3/4 court and getting the crazies involved. I mean, that was the loudest I've heard Cameron in a couple of years, to be honest.
Yeah. Maybe it's because I am a little too easy on them sometimes. I kind of didn't really see a lack of effort in the first half. I thought it was just they got the shots that they wanted and they missed the shots. And when you miss shots on one end, it's hard to carry that back to the defensive end. So I thought they at least deserved some praise for playing good enough defense to not be down, 6-10 points at halftime. And the other part of it is you're playing a Monday game after you just played on Saturday. That I know ESPN is going to do that because they're all about maximizing the viewers and the value, and Duke and Carolina can always bank on having 2 or 3 Saturday, Monday swings once it gets to about mid-January to the end of the season. But I hate those Monday games. I think they're just such a drag. Like you kind of feel the players dragging themselves back out there, and John Shire and Hubert Davis and every other coach that plays on Monday nights, like Bill Self, it feels like Kansas is on that every other week. They all sell it as it's good preparation for March. If you're going to make it in the NCAA tournament, you've obviously got to win 2 games in 3 days. If you're going to win conference tournaments, it's obviously a lot more condensed. But there's just it's a different feeling when it's the NCAA tournament compared to you're playing Boston College on a Saturday and Wake Forest on a Monday. There's just there's an obvious difference there. You're going to get a little bit more fired up to play an NCAA tournament game. But the second half was a lot better. from offensive execution to the energy level. Certainly in Cameron, my kind of sheepish confession, if you will, was I missed John throwing the ball back down the court. Like between everything with trying to get tweets out, trying to take play-by-play notes, I had my head down and I heard the crowd react, so I knew something happened. But I just thought it was one of, we've seen him a couple times pump up the crowd, and like when he does the same thing as Kay, when he feels like it's a fever point in the game, and he wants more noise, then he'll ask for it. And then it wasn't until after the game that I realized, oh shit, he like chucked the ball down the court and was all kinds of fired up. And then in the post game, he made a joke about wanting to shoot the ball at first, and he knew he couldn't do that. And I kind of wanted to be like, well, what rule is there that says a coach cannot shoot a dead ball three? But
knowing him, he'd make it too.
Yeah, and if you really want to get into it, I mean, Teddy Valentine's always got that technical foul trigger locked and loaded.
Don't get me started on Ted Valentine. I met him in 2019.
I will say this. Ted is a good ref when you remove everything else. It's just the everything else is always there.
Yes. He is a fantastic referee who loves the spotlight.
Yes. And that's such an oxymoronic term. Like you should not be a good ref who also craves the attention and the spotlight and turning your back on players and doing all the gesturing. Yeah.
I generally say, sorry, TK. I generally say the best referees are the ones you don't know the name of.
I agree to a point. I don't know. I know Duke fans hate Roger Ayers for the Wendell Carter call, but I think Roger Ayers is a really good ref.
His feet were set.
I think Ron Groover is a really good ref. I think Bert Smith is a really good ref. Like, I don't know, maybe it's different.
Don't tell the Carolina fans that last one.
Oh, they hate Bert.
Wasn't he the ref in the game against Baylor in 2022? Where Manick got tossed?
I'm not sure.
I'm pretty sure it was him.
Was it Jamie Lucky?
I think it was Lucky and Smith.
One of the two. I know that they hate them. Either way, though, it's actually a good point because in that game, I thought objectively, and I'm not objective, right? But, kind of more objective, right? I thought the refereeing was terrible on both ends.
It was awful.
For both teams. It was terrible.
That sucked.
The two instances that I go to where Tyrese Proctor falls down and hits his head in the first half, and I think we're still waiting on a ref to blow the whistle and give an injury timeout for that. Like,
right.
I was there on press row with my hands out. Like, are we going to let, Kyle Filipowski was down there with him, and I think Jeremy Roach was, or somebody else was, and Mike Starkey, the trainer for Wake Forest, actually was out on the court with him to try to make sure he was okay. And they still never blew the whistle. It was just like, okay, well, Duke, are you going to sub this guy out of the game? You got to put somebody at the table. And then the other one was in the second half, Wake committed its 8th team foul, not even 7th. We're talking 8th. I think their 7th was a player control foul or a shooting foul. So they're right in front of us because it's on Duke's offensive end of the court. And I can't remember which ref it was. I think it was Ted, or it was who was the other guy? I'm blanking on names. Clarence Armstrong. Was in front of us. He was in front of us, and he was about to have Duke inbound the ball from the sideline. And I was
right. Oh, right. Yeah.
I'm sitting on
press row. The whole court is lined up.
I'm sitting on press row, less than 10 feet away from him, like pointing at the free throw line, like, hey, you have to go shoot free throws now. Like Mark Mitchell's in front of me doing this. And the awareness on the court was very, very much lacking from all three of them.
I love that we're doing all this complaining and haven't even brought up the fact that Lee Castle was one of the refs too.
Well, the hilarious thing to me is Flip finally had a good game when Lee Cassell was on the whistle.
Yeah.
He had 3 games in a row. One of them was the Virginia game at Virginia last year, where Lee Cassell did the game and Filipowski had, I think it was 0, 5, and 7 points, or 0, 5, and 9 points per game.
Was he one of the Virginia Tech refs too when he got punched in the throat?
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yes.
Well, you brought up Filipowski. I will say that let's move a little bit away from the referees. The thing that I found kind of funny, with kind of breaking down all 3 of these games, is that from the fan base, and I don't know, Connor, if you kind of got this, and obviously Jack, you're all over social media, so let me know what both of you think on this one. You would have thought that we went 1-2 or 0-3 based on a lot of the reactions after the Notre Dame game and then after the Wake game. I just, it kind of surprised me a little bit with how much hate some of our guys were getting, and kind of where our fan base. Well, we needed to get a big in the portal, or we needed to get a big in the off season, and that's going to be our downfall. And just all these extremes where you're coming off a Carolina devastating loss, where you didn't have the energy that Carolina had. You were away. They have control of the conference. And now it's like, wait a minute, after 3 games and 3 wins, and they have 2 losses, we now control our destiny. You would have thought that there'd be renewed optimism with our fan base. Can you kind of talk to that a little bit, and where our fan base should be more, I guess, how can they be more level-headed?
Go ahead,
That's
Jack.
a great question. This is a great, thank you, Connor. This is a fantastic question. Connor, I don't know if you watched this episode not too long ago. Pablo he made us stop everything. He was like, look, I love you guys, Duke Nation, but some of you guys are idiots. Every time that something happens, it's like a low IQ play, or like someone has a bad game, regardless of the cause. It's, oh, this player sucks. I'm so excited they're not going to be at Duke next year. Oh, Shire needs to get a replacement for them ASAP. You're really trying to be teammates with Cooper Flagg, aren't you? To the guys who are projected to leave. Like, I mean, people have a lot of those like immediate knee-jerk reactions in game. Like, I waited to post my take after the Carolina game on Twitter until the next day, just so I could have some time to like breathe and see things not through the lens of I'm incredibly pissed right now.
Yeah, I mean,
that's how I feel.
As much as I like Twitter, the knee-jerk reactionism of it during games and in the hour or 2 that follows games is just the most unhealthy behavior possible. That's where I wish there would be like a cleanse of, all right, your team, whether you won or lost, because after wins, it's all the wins that aren't, left a little meat on that bone. We should have, people saying we should have blown out Notre Dame by 30. This team isn't going anywhere because they couldn't put away Notre Dame. That kind of stuff is also to detriment, but also like even the stuff where you win a game and it's all about, okay, we're punching our ticket to Phoenix. This team's a train that can't stop. Just, I mean, part of me thinks it's the footballification of sports. Like every game has to be a referendum on your program, and that's never been college basketball. Like you play 30 games for a reason, and teams get a lot better over the course of 4 months. Part of it, I think, is it's the accelerated news cycle. Like there's always something that's happening. If Duke lost to Carolina, and I think within 2 or 3 hours, somebody on the premium board over at Devils Illustrated wanted to know what Kamen Malawak's timeline was. And that's where I made a joke that he was already committed. He will be announcing on Sunday, and he will be enrolling on Monday, so that Duke has a 5-man who can guard Armando Bacot in the post when they see him again.
Right.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah, it's all in good fun, and like to be clear, that none of that is actually happening. I don't know the timeline on Kama, and he's actually taken visits to Kansas and Kentucky since I made that post.
Right.
But yeah, I just sometimes I hate the knee-jerk reactions, whether they win or lose. I make a point on the Wake Forest side of things. I make a point to not read game threads just because, like, I will say Duke is not the only team that has it. Wake Forest fans, like, you know,
do they want to fire Danny Manning again?
I don't think they would mind seeing him get fired at Louisville. Like, there's still enough bitterness there that they want to see him canned again. Which is a little weird to me. Like, he can't hurt you anymore. But
unless he takes the interim job.
yeah, they still do play Louisville, I think. Actually, maybe not. I'm not sure. Anyway, like the point guard for Wake, Kevin Miller, has been really kind of up and down this year. Like, on the road, he has been a lot less steady than he is at home. He gets sped up on the road. He's a 5'10" point guard who is unable to do things against length and athleticism. And where I'm trying to impress upon Wake fans is they've had the luxury of watching Alondas Williams 2 years ago win ACC Player of the Year, being the point guard, and he was in his 5th year of college. Ty Appleby last year was in his 6th year of being on a college roster and won one version of ACC Player of the Year. Miller played 2 seasons ago at Central Michigan as a freshman and averaged like 18 points on a 5-win team. And then last year played 4 games and sat out the rest of the year with an injury. So this is really his sophomore season. Like, it's okay to have patience, but every time he has a good game, he's, you know, this superstar. He should be all ACC. Every time he has a bad game, it's, we have a point guard problem. He doesn't play well with others. And I'm sure if I covered more teams, I'd be able to give you more detail now. Like, I'm sure Carolina, you know.
Well, Carolina fans right now, if you go on and just read Twitter and message boards, it is Hubert's getting out coached again. He's shortened that bench again, and all the things are wrong. We're not going anywhere. It's just so crazy to me that, you know, going from one game to the next. Sometimes even with our fans, especially, one half to the next. It's just crazy, you know, the waves of emotion that, you know, that fans will get to where they try to convince themselves of one thing or the other. And it can go from the team as a whole, the coaching staff, the shoes that they wear. You know, Duke fans are famous for one of the only team that ever has foot injuries. And it must be the shoes that we wear. It must be, it's just wild.
Yeah, and the other part of, like, this is more of a societal issue than it is college basketball. Like, confirmation bias is a hell of a drug.
Yeah.
Like, somebody says one thing and convinces themselves of it, and they will look for whatever evidence they can find.
The ACC is terrible. That is the confirmation bias over the last 5 years. Like, you can convince yourself. You can work the numbers however you want to do it to make it in your favor. And then I've started to see, Jack, I'm sure you have too, like, people kind of fighting back at that finally. You know, where it's like, who has the most wins? Who has the most Final Fours, the most Elite Eights, the most championships? All these different factoids. If you think we're the worst, why do we keep having the results with, like, the 4th or 5th most bids or something like that over the last 5 or 6 years, whatever it was? It's crazy because that confirmation bias, like you're talking about, to me, you're calling it the footballification or whatever. I think it's like the Final Fourification. Like, it is. Where if you don't make the Final Four, it's been an abject failure of a year. Like, that is just, I feel like, especially among blue bloods, if you don't make the Final Four, you had a horrible year. It's over. It was a failure. Where
there was a time when that was the case.
Sure, but like it's so kind of like, I don't want to say watered down, but it kind of is, especially with NIL and transfer pool, where all these different players are going. I don't even know who's on what team anymore. And it's really difficult to win 6 games in a row, number one. It's always been the case. but you're just not getting those juggernauts year after year after year. But you still have the same 5-6 programs that are, the cream of the crop. It's tough to win. And so, what I hear a lot is that you see, oh, well, if we don't have a big man, that's going to be our downfall. Well, odds are, and you're probably right, odds are we're not going to get there, regardless of whether it's the big man or if it's the point guard or it's the coaching or it's the not playing at Cameron, whatever excuse. Odds are you are going to be right, and that'll be the confirmation bias that you're going to use the rest of the next 8 months to justify how you were right, because the chances of you going to the Final Four are like 5%.
Yeah.
I mean, I feel like the big thing, there was a time when Final Four or bust was a very reasonable expectation for Duke. They made the Final Four all but 1 year between 1988 and 1994.
94, yeah.
They made the only year in that stretch they didn't was 93. Now, that being said, Duke in 2022 ended Coach K's longest Final Four drought literally since he got to Duke. The parity in college basketball is at the highest it has ever been. And there are, I saw a tweet a few weeks ago. It was like the AP Top 25 on this day in 2012, and there were no teams with more than 3 losses in the top 25.
Yeah. I think I saw the same thing.
And now it's what, 2? Purdue and
UConn? I want to say Purdue and UConn are the only teams with less than 3 losses.
Right.
I know they're the only.
Everybody else has 5.
I think they're the only teams over 20 wins.
Which is absurd to think about at this point in the year. If you go back even 5 years ago, That's absurd to think about. Yeah,
The Athletic just did a nice story on it being wide open in college basketball. And it's just, there's more talent in college basketball. I think it even goes to, I think, how long NBA careers are now. You have players playing at a high level into their 30s. It's not just LeBron. You have guys in the league that are still in the league. So if they're taking those jobs, then there's fewer jobs in the league for them. You know what I'm saying? There's a trickle down from the longer careers pros have.
There's less roster spots
to keeping talent in college. And then you throw in all of the guys using COVID years that should already be moved on. It's gonna,
sorry.
it's gonna add to if you're talking to other guys in Carolina, you got to throw in Vontarius Woolbright at Western Carolina, averaging 23, 12, and 5.
Who was the dude at Detroit last year?
The coach's son, Antoine.
Yeah, the coach's son. Yes, yeah. Who almost beat Pistol Pete's scoring record, but needed the 5th year and still didn't do it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think if I remember correctly, he actually had the opportunity to come back, but declined it because he thought it was going to be launch for him to take the scoring record.
I might
be misremembering that.
I don't know, but I think Ryan Young's in a COVID year.
Yeah. Yeah, Ryan Young. It's there. It is wide open in college basketball, and honestly, I enjoy it. It's fun to go in and not know if Wisconsin is going to go to Rutgers and win a game, because even though their record isn't good and Wisconsin's is, Rutgers has grown ass men in there. The Cliff Omori that I saw him play when they were at Wake this year. That's a grown ass man.
Rutgers is down to Northwestern right now. Shout out Chris Collins.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I knew they were on my brain for some reason. Not playing Wisconsin though.
Kind of bringing it back a little bit to Duke. After this 3-game home stretch where we did go 3-0, that's kind of where this whole conversation started. It's, to me, I feel a little bit better. Certainly after after we played Carolina, and certainly after we played Notre Dame, because I thought that was a little bit sloppy. Somewhat understandable. I didn't think the juice was in the building, and I think it's coming off a loss to your arch rival on the road and trying to get that swagger back. Thought they did well against Boston College for the majority of that game. And then I came away really encouraged. I know it was 48-42 in the second half against Wake, but I came away really encouraged because Flip, I thought, played really well. Mark Mitchell played fantastic. We basically had, I know Mark Mitchell didn't finish with it, but we basically had 3 guys with double-doubles. When was the last time, is there ever been a time where Duke had 3 guys with double-doubles in the same game? Because Mark finished with 23 and 8.
I think Zion, RJ, and Trey did it once.
Okay. So, I mean, that was 5 years ago. But
yeah, thanks for making me feel old. That was my freshman year in college.
Well, I feel real old.
Not to make you guys feel older, but...
but yeah, Connor, like, you're the most objective of the 3 of us on this call. So, after those 3 games, kind of where do you feel about Duke? Has anything changed in the way that you feel about Duke? Up, down, otherwise, or is it the same?
I kind of feel the same, honestly. I look at, like, I know it's easy to wrap these 3 home games up together. I look at the Notre Dame and BC games differently than I look at the Wake game. Like, those were such laissez-faire games against teams that Duke can just out-talent. Like, you can get away with playing not to your complete effort level that you need to have and still beat BC and Notre Dame. That's where those programs are. Wake's program is not there. I mean, Wake's program is not at the level that Duke's is, but I think Wake is one of the 4 most talented teams in the ACC, and the standings reflect that right now. They're in 4th, and I think that's why John came into his presser the other night, and one of the main points that he wanted to make was how good he thinks Wake Forest is, because that is a quality win at home, no matter what the metrics say about quad 1 or quad 2, no matter what you want to what kind of overreactions you want to have to it only being an 8-point win against a team that Wake hasn't won in Cameron since Tim Duncan was a senior. If you really want to feel old, TK. I don't know, Jack, you might not have even been born.
I was not.
97.
I was not.
Yeah. Okay. We feel great now. But that was the impressive game to me. But the way I also look at it is these next 3 and going on the road is where we're really going to find out where this team's ceiling is in March. These next 3, Florida State, Miami, and Wake in the rematch, Duke has lost their previous road game there in all 3 instances. Like Florida State, they went down there and lost it in overtime with Paolo. Miami, we know what happened last year when they beat Carolina, went down to Miami on a Monday night and got run out of the gym. Norchad Omier, I think, doubled his 3-point total on the season in the first 5 minutes, and it was just on. And then Wake went to Winston last year in a pre-Christmas game without Derek and Derek Lively and lost, and then got Wake back at home later on in the season. So these 3, like Florida State and Miami, they need to beat Duke to be in the conversation to have an at-large bid. Wake, if they beat Duke in the home game, is probably on the right side of the bubble. But these are 3 teams that the way they play, like with Florida State's depth, athleticism, length, Miami's can score on everybody, even though they got shut down by Clemson in the second half last night. Don't let one game affect your opinion of their offense. And then Wake, we just saw the ways that Wake can challenge Duke. These are the 3 all on the road that I look at and say, this is the barometer of where I want to judge this team. This is where I want to look at this team and think, are they lacking in the same areas that we've thought they lacked in at times this season with effort against Carolina, with rim protection against Arizona and Carolina, or do they have enough to go? I think even 2-1, if the one loss is still a competitive game and it comes down to the wire, anything can happen. I think if you go 2-1 or 3-0 in these types of games, then you can start saying, like, okay, this is a Duke team that can make it to the second weekend, can threaten to get to a Final Four. Like, this is the team that could break through and be, on the same kind of roll at the end of the season as they were a year ago.
Yeah, Jack, where do you kind of stand before we get to a couple player profiles?
I agree with what Connor said completely. I think, we're gonna have to see, but I mean, I don't really think my opinion of the team has changed much. Just, they won some tough games against, Wake, in my opinion, is a tournament team. I think they should firmly be on the right side of the bubble. Not to say that they are in the right people's eyes, but in my eyes, they are. I'm also just very pro ACC in terms of my biases. But first two games of that home stretch were tougher than they should have been, and Wake is a good opponent that Duke was able to hold off and beat by a respectable margin. I mean, it took an incredibly strong second half to do it, but you know what? That's kind of what I expected from the team going into this home stretch. Just given how, I'm just going to say this as a fan, frustrating it's been to watch them at times. Like, they're a good team, we know that, but God, if it's not frustrating, I don't know what it is.
They leave meat on the bone.
They do. Like, they really do.
They leave you unsatisfied sometimes because it's. I think some of it is preseason expectations. Like when the three sophomores announce they're coming back, and when they have the recruiting class that they have, you think this is going to stay in the top 5 all year type of team.
And team that to me felt like 2015 a lot coming in.
Yeah, and they for whatever reason, like injuries, I go to role definition a lot. Like I think this team still is sometimes looking for who drives the bus, like who do they go to in clutch moments when you need a bucket. I think John Shire has all but admitted it, and I think Kyle Filipowski would admit, like, sometimes Flip's body language is bad. And when your best player's body language is bad, and when he's pouting up and down the court, it wears on you. Like it's grating to watch. But Bud, you're always left with this with this team. Like if they turn the corner, like, it is a team that is as talented as anybody in the country.
I think the Pitt and the Virginia Tech. Sorry, TK. I think the Pitt and the Virginia Tech games, the Pitt and at Virginia Tech, shows what this team's ceiling is. And I think if the team plays like that, that's Phoenix. But they don't play like that on a regular basis. We've seen it 2 times this season against a power conference opponent.
Yeah, that Pitt win is going to end up looking a lot better if Pitt continues to knock people off. I mean, obviously they just knocked off UVA. So, I think a lot of the points that you guys are making are very fair. A lot of it probably came down to expectations. We certainly had them coming into this year. Maybe some of those were a little bit overvalued. One of them, let's talk a little bit about different players here, is certainly I'm guilty, 100%. Player review, Tyrese Proctor. I thought that this kid, coming off of last year, he was the best player against Tennessee. He had a great last month of the year. He was just going to pick up where he left off and then just excel, because I felt like he had finally kind of figured it out. And I thought he was a potential ACC Player of the Year, first team All-American type talent. I still think he has the talent, but to Jack's point earlier about the team overall, it's just kind of like, it's just not always there. So, kind of like coming into this year, where did you kind of view Tyrese Proctor? And certainly, we have 7 games left in the regular season. We have the ACC tournament, and obviously Duke's in the NCAA. Where does Tyrese Proctor finish this season? Is it just we have no idea which one is going to show up, or is it somehow it's going to click? Coaching staff is going to light a fire under him. Somebody's going to say something and be like, get your head out of your ass and, pick it up. Or is it just, we just have no idea every single game?
Yes, yeah, I thought we already had the, kick in the ass, turning point when he had not just the 24-point game against Louisville, but followed it with the 18-point game against got to pull it up here. After Louisville was Clemson, when he had 18 points and made the game-winning free throws with however many seconds left. So, yeah, I'd like to say that it's gonna do this, like it's gonna have a steady upward trajectory from now until whenever the season ends. I don't know if I believe that. Like I just seems like he's destined to be a little inconsistent. He's got injuries baked in there. Like he had the ankle injury. He went down against Wake with a head injury that makes his status a little up in the air. Like without knowing anything for sure, he's a guy that I would want to have eyes on during warmups in Tallahassee because you never know with a concussion. And I spent a lot of time on Monday night looking across the court at him on Duke's bench with a towel wrapped around his head and his head down. And not just during timeouts, like that was while the game's going up and down. Like, so he's kind of been bitten by the bad luck injury bug. I think it's just going to be an inconsistent type of season for him.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
I mean, yeah, I think consistency is a question mark. I mean, I said a few weeks ago, like, it was probably a little over a month ago at this point, I said, I don't know how you can look at his season so far as anything other than a disappointment. I would not call it a disappointment anymore, but he is certainly not meeting the expectations of any Duke fans coming into the season. Like, the way he ended last season, you expected, like, I was saying this guy's going to look like a combination of the Jones brothers, and he's not. Obviously he's not a third Jones brother. He's his own thing, but I mean, yeah, it certainly hasn't had luck factoring in his favor, but the consistency is leaving a lot to be desired for him. But when he's on, he is a first team All-American level talent. It's just, when is that happening? That's the question.
It's possible that it's next year.
That's true.
I mean, again, as staunch of a Proctor supporter as I am, and I can bury my head in the sand and talk about he's going to come out of this slump and he's going to pick it up and he's going to have that same finish to the end of the year as he did last year. Right now, Conor, he's kind of playing himself right back into junior year.
Yeah, I don't see. Maybe I'm a little cynical. I don't think somebody that's talked about as still a first rounder is going to come back. I guess he kind of fit that mold last year, and maybe that is what leads you to assume it's not going to happen 2 years in a row for a guy. Like, he's not going to put it off 1 year just to do it again the next year. I think and I saw something the other day that I didn't read, but it said that the draft class was actually deeper than it appeared to be like 2 months ago. And I don't know if that'll affect him at all or not, but I've been operating under the assumption for like 6 months that it's a terrible draft class and anybody that's on the fence needs to go because of how bad of a class it lines up as being. Like, you're going to have second round guys getting picked in the first round and getting guaranteed contracts. So even if you do fall backward in a projection, you're still possibly getting a first round guarantee. So yeah, I don't know yet if I'd start thinking about him coming back for a junior season.
No, there's still too much basketball to be played right now. I kind of just threw that out there, but I would like to think, because I know that he has the talent, I know that he has the tools. I feel like, kind of to your point earlier, that he might be one of those players that just isn't quite sure of exactly what his role on this team is. It comes into this year of, okay, I'm one of the three captains, I'm the starting point guard. Yes, he gets hurt. Yes, he goes out, for 4 games or whatever it was, and Foster comes in and does a really solid job, and he comes off the bench for a couple games, and then has a couple game stretch there where it was a really solid showing. Okay, Tyrese is here. We're cooking. Then he goes to Carolina, has a dud offensively. I thought he played well defensively against RJ Davis.
Mm-hmm.
And then he kind of follows it up with a couple performances against BC and Notre Dame. And then against Wake, it was an 0 for 4, 0 for 5, no points. Obviously, just, his head banged in the lane defensively in the first half. And now we're just back up in the air like, holy shit, what is going to happen to this kid? I don't know. I just feel like at some point something has to go right for him, and consistently. So I'm going to stay hype on him. I'm going to stay optimistic on him. I just hope that I'm not wrong here. Who the hell knows? But the other guy that I wanted to talk to about Conor is Filipowski. He's the guy that gets more hate than anybody from our fan base. Some of it's justified with body language. We've beaten that horse to death. But then there's the other part where he's putting up really good numbers, and he has to take all the beating defensively against the other team's bigs every single night. He's going to have to go to Florida State and deal with about 8 of them. So, I hope that our fans are, going to give the guy a break a little bit, right?
Yeah, man, he's a complicated dude. It's complicated to evaluate him as a player, and it's complicated, I think, for John to coach him. He told us as much on Monday night when he took the first question about Flip, and he just kind of looked a little bit and was like, he's an interesting dude. I said on a podcast earlier that, like, I hate what I'm about to do because I hate people that do it, but I'm going to do it anyway. I hate taking something that's said about somebody and applying it to somebody else. But when John talks about Jared McCain and being able to coach him really hard and that he can take criticism and not lose any of his confidence, if you apply that to Filipowski, I don't think you're able to coach him in the same way. And so I think that's been part of it. I think it's been a little more of a task and a chore to coach Kyle this year than it was last year. I think some things came easier for him last year than this year have. And part of that is he's playing the 5 for the first time in his life, basically. Like, he always had his brother to play the 5 when he was coming up. He had Derek to play the 5 last year. Like, he is not a 5. He is a finesse big that they're asking to bang down low. Yeah. And the ACC is kind of a centers league. Like, you have Baycott, you have PJ Hall, you have Efton Reed, Quentin Post, Norchad O'Meara. There are a lot of really good centers in this league, and he's one of them. He's just kind of the oddball center in that mix. Like, he's not the one that grew up playing the 5. Like, you know what I'm saying? So I think some of the criticism of him is not warranted. Like, he is definitely the most talented player on Duke's roster, and he is probably the most important player on Duke's roster. I don't know what it looks like in the middle without him. You're trying to squeeze minutes out of Sean Stewart. He's bouncing 3 ways in the right direction one minute, and then he's bouncing 3 ways the wrong direction in the next minute. Right. He's a freshman big. And Ryan Young has his limitations, as we've discussed many times. So I get it with Kyle. I get where the frustration stems, but I also think some of it is justified. Some of it is not. And you're trying to push him to the level. Like, you saw it going into a TV timeout in the second half the other night. John grabbed him on the way to the bench, and TK, you might have seen this. John was in his face for a good 30 to 40 seconds. And it was not like in your face screaming his head off. It looked like it was pointed but positive encouragement. It was, right. Look, when Efton Reed is not in the game, they don't have somebody that can guard you. Like, you can go around some of their guys. You can score over some of their other ones. You need to take advantage of that. You need to be the best player on the court. And for the most part, like, he was, and Mark Mitchell was. And that's what they need. Maybe not every game. Like, some games their guard shooting can probably carry them a bit, but most games they probably need that out of Flip and out of Mark.
Yeah, Jack, go ahead, because I mean, to me, that's a great point. It's tough if I can't figure out what to say about Flip, and John can't figure it out. It's just one of those things where you just wish. I think I've said this quite a few times. Where if we had 12 players that all played as hard as Jared McCain does, then we would win every game by 50 points. And Filipowski, is kind of one of those guys where half of it I get. He's having to play out of position and do all these things defensively that he's never had to do before. And then the other half is, the jogging up the court, the pouting, the, moping to the refs and things like that. But then he comes back and, he has 21 points, 11 rebounds. And I just can't figure him out. So enlighten me, enlighten the audience here on what Flip is. What our fans should be treating, how our fans should be like treating Flip.
Look, Flip guarded Armando Bacot against Carolina and was absolutely gassed and put up 22. You're asking a guy who plays more similar to Danny Ferry than any modern Duke center, like Coach K or Duke center, and you're asking him to play like Elton Brand. That's not his game. He's being forced into it, This is not something he's used to, like Connor said. He's not a 5. He's playing against all these really physically just wear you down type of centers. And he's still putting up great numbers for the most part. He'll have one bad game every few, 9 points against Clemson, 8 points against Notre Dame. Okay. And going back to Louisville game, 17 and 15, then the 9 points against Clemson, which also came with 4 blocks, by the way. 14 and 8 against Virginia Tech, 22 and 5 against Carolina while defending Bacot. 8 and 9, 3 assists against Notre Dame, then 16 points against BC, and 21 and 10 against Wake. Pretty damn good stretch. People trash him because they're like, oh, he should be National Player of the Year. Oh, no. He's playing like a first-team All-American who's going to be drafted in the top 10 instead of Zach Edey. Oh, no. What a shame. He's 20 years old. Cut him some slack. Come on.
The other part of it, I think part of the frustration is seeing a 7-footer shoot threes.
I think,
yeah.
Connor, I think about that a lot. I'm cool with him shooting them. I don't want him shooting 6 and 7 a game, but I also understand why he's shooting them. There's a multitude of reasons why he's shooting them. 1 is what his game is. 2, he's showing scouts that he can. 3 is probably saving himself some energy from having to continue to pound down low and keep himself fresh, not have to run as far back down the court defensively. There are a multitude of reasons why he's taking them. I just don't need him taking 6 or 7. I'm fine with him taking 3 to 4.
Yeah, I think where the frustration of the fans is valid is he takes 6 or 7 and it feels like he's trying to prove to scouts that he has that shot, because we know enough about what the NBA thinks of him to know that the NBA does not see him as a 5. He's a 4 in their league. And if he's going to be a 4 in their league, he needs to shoot better than certainly isn't he 2 for 17 in the last 5 or 6 games? He is not shooting a high percentage from out there at all. He had the 1 week where he was 8 for 9. And other than that week, I think he's under 30%. So that's where, as the disconnect between what the college game is and what the NBA game is grows, you're always going to have players doing things that the NBA wants to see them do that aren't helping their college teams. And that's just where basketball is at this point. That's why freaking Zach Edey had to make a 3 the other night. That's why you've got John. That's why Jonathan Givney is tweeting about what his shot looks like in warmups rather than tweeting about how he's going to be the unanimous player of the year for the 2nd year in a row. And he's got to win it both years, averaging 23 and 14 to be able to be in the first round conversation. That's Shaq 30 years ago. So I don't that's that's where I gonna level with the fans, because it's like I don't know if this team's recipe is having Kyle Filipowski shoot 6 threes a game, especially when if you're saying that you're going to get X amount of threes from this Duke team per game, I want as many threes as possible of that allotment coming from Jared McCain, Jeremy Roach, and Caleb Foster. Like I don't even know if you throw Tyrese Proctor in there right now because of his inconsistencies we just talked about. But McCain and Roach are both shooting over 40%. Like give them all the 3-point shots that they want.
Right.
Don't give them to the 7-footer that can get hot from out there, but can also miss 4 in a row.
Easily miss 4 in a row. Let's wrap this one up real quick. You talked about how certain guys will kind of play up to the scouts. One thing that I've loved with Mark Mitchell is that he's playing the game correctly. Now, he had the infamous shooting slump, or that's just who he is shooting the ball. I know he's in a few recently, guys hot as fire, but he's playing the game great. Like he's attacking when he's supposed to attack. He is making the right pass when he's supposed to make the right pass. He's getting out in transition, finishing plays. He's playing defensively the way we know he can at a first team all-ACC level. He's a guy that I feel like when him and Filipowski are playing in sync, that makes our ceiling that much higher. He's the X factor on this team, and when he's playing really good ball, he can put up 20 tonight, and you wouldn't even realize it. I think that's kind of what happened, Connor, against Wake Forest. I looked up at one point, like, oh shit, he has 17. Like it just didn't feel that way.
Yeah, is this where I tout my Mark Mitchell double-digit tracker, which is at 20?
It made ESPN during the Wake game.
Did it really?
Yeah.
Nice.
Duke does put it in their game notes, so I think they're paying more attention to the Duke game notes from Kyle Serba and Henry Scott than they are to little old me. But yeah, 29-3 when he hits double figures, and like I've said and written, I mean, look, some of those are he had 12 points and they won by 25, and he was kind of like the fourth guy to get to double figures in a game, and yeah, like he's there. Other times you're like Monday night when he is attacking off the dribble, he is so dangerous, and he opens everything up. When you have shooters like the shooters that Duke has, he has open driving lanes, and he's gotten really good at driving them. And yeah, I mean, to your point with if Duke had 12 guys that played like Jared McCain, I would say Mark Mitchell plays like Jared McCain, or at least as close to Jared McCain as Jared McCain does. Like those two guys. The main difference is Jared is a lot more adept at like poking the ball loose and coming up with it. Like he's got a little bit more of that hand-eye coordination, and his hands are a little more sure than Mark. But yeah, Mark is they're the two guys that John talks about the most in his press conferences, that and it just comes up back to they make winning plays. It doesn't always show up in the box score, but they make winning plays, and their value is much beyond whatever they're averaging. And I think both of them are averaging pretty nice numbers and shooting decent percentages. I think, Mark Mitchell's like 6 for 11 since breaking out of the slump. Yeah, I mean, it's not like a perfect game. We can talk about this.
From where he came from, that's as close as we're going to get. So. But the other thing is, though, Connor, is he's taking them in rhythm, and he's not hesitating either. And he's picking them from the right spots. So you don't really gasp as much as you did prior in the season, because you're like, God, this guy can hit that shot.
Yes, and the whole thing when he was 0 for 17 was his shot was the same as it was last year when he was a 35% shooter. Nobody changed his shot. And I cover baseball, and there was a baseball player I covered at Wake Forest a few years back who he had an unconventional swing, and Wake's hitting coach had told people around the program, I hope his swing never breaks, because if it breaks, I don't know how to fix it. I think of Mark Mitchell's shot and his jumper in the same regard. Like nobody wants to mess with that shot because it still goes in. Like it's still, it's still a somewhat acceptable percentage outside of the month-long stretch or whatever. Just leave it alone. It's going to go in. Like it's you don't have to watch it every time. Like you can close your eyes and you can just look up and see if the crowd reacts or not.
Yeah, go ahead, Jack.
I mean, as a baseball coach, I feel that quote a lot. But yeah, I mean, with Mark, he reminds me of Kawhi Leonard in college in so many ways, including the jump shot with the incredible lack of arc. Like, it's working and it will continue to work, and I hope it never stops working, but you know, Chip England's gonna have an interesting case on his hands if Mark ends up in OKC. I'll say that. Nothing but love for Chip England. Great coach, former Blue Devil. He's the reason Kawhi Leonard makes shots now. It would be an interesting case to see him work with Mark. Something I have thought about way too much lately.
That's definitely a first hearing that. But yeah, no. Look, Mark Mitchell, just keep doing what you're doing. I mean, he plays so hard, and he's making the right plays, which I think is really the difference. The difference for him as a basketball player, and especially for this team. So if he continues to do that, some of the other guys match, the energy levels of he and Jared. At least we're going to be in every single game, and I just don't want to walk away from a game. In a do or die tournament saying we didn't give the effort that we could have. Like that's the word. Like we lose, we lose. Somebody shoots lights out, they shoot lights out. But it wasn't because we didn't give the effort. That's my thing. But we'll wrap the podcast up here. We start the road streak here. Florida State at Florida State, 2 p.m. Saturday. Connor, talk to us a little bit about Florida State, what you know, and how does Duke match up with them.
Yeah, they had a terrible non-conference, and I go back to, I think it was the first ACC teleconference of the year, and they had beaten somebody over the weekend that you kind of didn't expect to see them beat. And so we get on this teleconference on Monday, and I asked Leonard Hamilton what he liked about what his team showed him in that game that they won, and he talked about how they finally had the depth that he liked to play with, and it was like a alarm bell went off in my head, and it was like, they're going to be a problem. They got Primo Spears eligible. He was one of the 2-time transfers that wasn't playing in the beginning of the year, but the December lawsuit made him eligible. So they got a guard who can handle. And they got some guys healthy. Like Jalen Gainey was a center who they didn't have early. They actually lost one of their best players, Cameron Fletcher, to a season-ending injury for the second year in a row. But this is not as talented a Florida State team as Leonard had from like 2018 to 21, but it's closer than the last 2 years have been. Like, this is a long athletic team. He loves to get into the bench, and they've got some legitimate dudes like Jameer Watkins is really good. I think it's Darren Green Jr. is a really good shooter. This is Florida State's given some people that are trying to make the tournament in the ACC some bad losses or quote unquote bad losses. Like, I don't think they're done giving those out.
Jack, are you, after listening to that, are you predicting a Duke loss?
No, I never predicted Duke loss.
That's fair.
Watkins is talented. Green's shooting 38% from deep. Spears, he's an interesting one because he's coming off the bench, but he's putting up double figures. But I feel like Hamilton has a guy who does that every other year. It's Florida State. They're all ridiculously oversized for their position. Every single one of their guys, like 6'8" point guard and a 7'11" center. That's just how Hamilton does his thing. Like, a lot of respect for Leonard Hamilton, but it's going to be an interesting matchup. I think Duke matches up well because they have really good perimeter play this year. So even if size-wise they're outmatched, you got some really good outside players that are gonna play well. I think this is a good game for Jared specifically. It's gonna put his rebounding, his 10 rebound streak to the test a little bit, but I'm really intrigued to see how he plays against these guys. But I think Duke wins.
Yeah, I'm guessing that I'm going to be the only one with a score prediction here, so I'll just get that out of the way now. I think that Duke finds. This is when I felt like coming off that 3-game win streak. I know they were all at home, but they were coming off of a tough loss against North Carolina, where the sky was falling, and now we control our own destiny. So you talk about the preseason expectations. Look, we're 19-5. We're 10-3 in the conference. We control what's going to happen the rest of this year. And if you feel like you are a championship team, and the three sophomores, when they came back, they all talked about unfinished business, and I know it's a lot of coach speed, player speed type of stuff, but these guys, they felt like that was what they came here to do, what they came back to do. You said it earlier, Connor, like this is the barometer. If you're going to do it, now's the time to do it. 7 games left. This is the hardest stretch, 3-game road trip. Find a way to win. Find a way to win. I don't care how it happens. 78, 74. Give me Duke. Connor, I'll give you the last one. I know you're not going to make a score prediction. You're not that kind of guy. But
I will say I was actually going to give a 78-74 prediction myself.
Oh, there we go. Thank you, Jack. See, now things are coming together here.
Yeah, I can't give a score prediction or a winner prediction. I think this comes down to how well Duke can stay in the game against the depth and the length. The thing about Florida State is, especially on the road for Duke, like Duke is going to have a foul situation or two that there is going to affect the rotation. Florida State is not. Like between being at home and having the depth that they have, they're going to have every weapon available to them. And that's something that I'll be really interested to see how Duke handles.
Well, we're going to find out. 2 p.m. Saturday. Connor, man, appreciate you coming back. I guess we'll probably see you again in about 8 days from Saturday after we play Wake Forest again, because you're going to be put through the ringer again. But no, appreciate you coming on, man. Duke Nation, look, everything's out in front of us now. So now is put up or shut up time. 7 games left in the regular season. All out there in front of you. Go ahead and take it. Let's go, Duke. Jack, close us out.
All right. Yeah. Thank you guys for listening as always. Let me get that exit music up that AC always runs. Thank you guys. You know where to find us. I want to give a quick shout out to the Autograph app. I just launched a partnership with them. You get the app. There's a link in the Twitter and Instagram bios, Duke.mbb and Duke Blue MBB. You get all your Duke news there. They got Devils Illustrated. They got Connor's stuff. They got the 5 Point Play podcast. You'll be able to listen to this episode there. They got a bunch of stuff. Duke Wisdom, Duke Blogger. They got Crazy Cast. They got the Chronicle articles. And you read articles, you can earn points to get rewards, including potentially tickets in the not-too-distant future. So keep an eye on that. Check out the Autograph app. Shout out to them. You know where to find Connor. There's his Twitter handle right there. You know where to find us. Don't forget to check out the Patreon. And as always, let's go Duke.
Let's go Duke.